So we have Britt Arnold and Hilary Phelps. We have one more panelist who may be joining us, so we'll pop her right in. But I'm gonna have you all introduce yourselves and tell them a little something about yourselves. So Britt, let's start with you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Britt Arnold. Great to see such a big group. I was not expecting 36 people, I think. So 36 women, that is amazing. And I'm very happy to be here. I am the current president of Tagler Construction and Supply. We sell construction materials. I started the company, I bootstrapped it, bottom up with nothing but the savings in my bank account 8 years ago. I can't believe it's been 8 years. We are currently located at Trade Point Atlantic. So you're all familiar with the Key Bridge. We're right there, it's in our backyard. So I will get into my story and how I got there, but currently that is what I'm doing. I'm running a 8-year-old business at this point.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna give the whole story now.
No,
that's so good. We're gonna get the high level.
We'll get in there. Just give the basics.
No, I love that because that gives me permission. So like, okay, where can I? My name is Hilary Phelps. I am. I still get nervous, right? Like I still get nervous speaking to women in general anywhere because I always feel it's so powerful to get a group of women together to elevate each other, right? I'm like a huge supporter of women supporting women. And so my story is a little different. A year and a half ago, I launched a platform called The Right Room with the idea of helping women navigate transition. Myself, I got sober at 29. I went through a painful and toxic marriage and divorce 4 years ago. Became a single mom, and I was like, what do I want to do? And so what I realized is women go through all these transitions in life and we lose ourselves in a purpose. And I love this emotional intelligence because this is my jam, and it just comes back to us, like finding our voice, finding our inner guidance, finding what drives us, because we're all different and unique. And so I'm super excited to be here with you guys today.
Well, so let's jump into the questions and then we will get more into the stories because I've read a lot of background on both of you and I think there are some amazing points. So if you don't bring something up that I saw and read, I definitely will because I was inspired after a lot of what I read. But talk about, you both are running your own companies, you forged a way there. So talk about your leadership style. What does that mean to you? How did that develop? What does that look like?
So instead of telling you what I think my leadership style is and making it up in my head, maybe what I want it to be, I just went to the top 3 people that I work with the most and I asked them today because I'm like, I'm not going to give you some idea. And one of them is my current vice president who he resigned because he's moving back to Australia. So he can say whatever he wants. So, and there were a lot of through lines, but he said, you take on more than you should, you're in the minutia, and you micromanage. That's what I got from him. But the through lines with all 3 employees that I asked were tough, demanding, has high expectations, and intense. Then I also got thoughtful. Number 1 priority is making sure that our well-being is first and foremost and that we have the opportunity to grow. And as I'm navigating through my company, I am always thinking of employee growth more than anything else. And that encompasses everything, not just financial, the opportunity to move up the ladder. It could be to go to a different company. And that is what I lose sleep at night, is making sure my employees have that opportunity and knowing that their families are also taken care of. And then as far as the piece on micromanaging and being in the minutia, while I know that has a negative connotation a lot of times, and if you feel yourself in this, not in your job role, if you feel like you're kind of always overarching, then I can tell you every almost penny where it's being spent, and we're doing hundreds of projects, and it's because I care. I really, really care, and I want to be in the trenches with my team. However, I am at a point where I can definitely bottleneck the company at times, and that's the transition period. It doesn't get easier with times. I'm 8 years in, and it's as hard as it was when I got fired, which I was almost forced into starting my company, which I'll get into. It's just different. different challenges. And now I'm at the point where the company is outgrowing me and I have to loosen my grip. My knuckles are like white, and it's so now I'm trying to figure out that transition. It's very hard. And as a small business, when you lose your VP who's taken on so much, now I'm taking on that, trying to hire, and I'm trying to just keep my head above water right now. As I'm talking to you, I'm thinking about like, oh my gosh, all the things going on and the survival of the company and my employees. But that's how I would describe myself. And I'm working on all of it to, so the feedback, the real-time feedback from the people around you is so valuable. You don't have to guess. Don't guess who you are. Get it real and then work on it.
So was that what you were expecting to hear? Is that what you thought you were projecting? And is that what you wanted to look like?
Yeah, I think so. I wasn't shocked by any of it, but I appreciated the honesty. No one held back. Which I mean, I have developed thick skin over the years from doing these types of things. But the one thing that I really loved about that type of feedback is they were comfortable enough around me to give it. Mm-hmm. So if nothing else, I was like, that I'll take away. No matter how hurtful or alarming some of it can be, they were comfortable to tell me. So that says something.
That is reflective of your leadership style. And we talked about micromanaging in here today. And some people said, well, no, it's what did you say? Effective management. That's what it is.
Whoever said that, I'll go with that.
I think it was Samantha somewhere. Okay, so Hilary, and welcome to our third panelist. So before we get to Hilary and your leadership style, let's introduce our third panelist.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Arion Long. I'm the founder and self-proclaimed chief estrogen officer at a tech company called Femly, where we are providing smart dispensers. You go in a restroom and you wave hello and like the machine spits out disappointment when you're trying to get a tampon. I invented a machine that allows you to wave hello and then you get organic pads and tampons for free. So happy to be here.
So, well, since you're already on the floor, Hilary, I'm gonna let her you talk about your leadership style. Hilary will come back to you, and then I want to get into how each of you all started. I mean, these are very interesting. You're in a male-dominated field. This isn't something that you see much of often. Hilary, you've been in the public eye, and you are starting this journey. You open up, you're very vulnerable. So I'm so curious to hear about how all of these things came about. But since you're already talking about your company, go ahead and explain your leadership style.
Sure. So I would say that my leadership style is very, very bullish. I can totally attribute that to being a native New Yorker and then Baltimore transplant by way of Morgan State. But my leadership style tends to be very hands-on, but very, very collaborative. I am managing a team of now 14. When I met you, Britt, which was like not that long ago, we had a team of 5. So we've more than doubled. And I like to think that we are all in the weeds and in the thick of it every single day. I too struggled with micromanaging in the beginning because I think that, especially when you found a company from its inception, it is so easy to take ownership of things and like view them as your baby. And I think for me, what the pandemic taught was the lesson and importance of not only delegating, but of also understanding when you are the bottleneck and understanding when a company is not, in fact, your baby. I am in a very male-dominated industry of technology, and when you say tech, people often assume an app. But with what we're doing, it has been such a jam-packed journey because we're venture-backed. So if you're unaware, less than 1% of VC capital goes to Black women, and I was the 100th Black woman in U.S. history to raise $1 million. Wow. But I think the most crazy thing about it is that, we're up against competition that raised $7 million for every $1 million of mine. And so, you're approaching a very male-dominated industry and you're being a badass and a rock star and you're doing it in lipstick and you're doing it scared, you're doing it broke, you're doing it by any means necessary, which is why I'm here today. So thank y'all for having me.
That is awesome. Thank you. So Hilary, I'm interested to hear if you follow suit with this type of leadership. What is your experience? How do you define leadership?
So I think because I'm also a solopreneur, it's a little different, right? And so when I think of leadership for me, because I guide women to navigate, to go inward, right? And so to find their voice, to find their purpose. And so for me, it's leading by example. And what I mean by that is if I want women to feel safe and I want women to go deep with me, then I myself also have to be vulnerable and empathetic. And so when I am leading or guiding women, the biggest thing I can do is listen, because there's so much we don't say in what we say, right? And even in body language, right? Like, no. Like, it means it's a protective area, right? And so, like, for me, it's really important to be present and focused and listen, and then dive deeper with curiosity. Like, why is that coming up for you? What is important about that? Can we lean into that? Tell me more. Because oftentimes, too, I found, I mean, we're all women, we can cut ourselves off, or we're like, I'm being too much right now, or oh, I'm not enough. But giving women the space to just continuously go deeper. But again, that comes back to me. If I'm myself not vulnerable and open and empathetic, then I can't expect other women to do the same.
Let's talk about how you all started. How you started your businesses, why you started that. Where did you find within yourself to take that leap and to now be where you are with it?
Okay, so I'll give you the shorter version. So for the first 22 years of my life, soccer was my entire life. So I played growing up, and then I went to UConn and I played pro ball. So the league at that time, the league in the States was not very financially stable. So the coaches gave me an ultimatum, 2 to 3 days to get up and move to France to play. It's a club, if you're familiar with soccer, it's a club called PSG, a really strong club in France. And at that time, I really had to make a decision. Did I want to continue to chase these dreams, barely surviving financially, move my entire life to a foreign country in 2 to 3 days? Or was I going to get into the business world? And that's when I decided, like, I'm going to get into business. That was a really hard time for me because I know all of you have at one time identified with something. And I identified with soccer, but when I tell you that was it, like, that was it. So all of a sudden, I didn't have this identity and I didn't know who I was. But the light, when everything changed for me, I was able to tell myself, okay, you don't have the sport of soccer anymore, but business can be a sport. And that's when it all clicked. I was like, oh, we're going to get competitive with business. So right after soccer, I went to work with and for my uncle, who happens to still be the vice president at Grasmick Lumber. So Lou Grasmick and Nancy Grasmick have been in my life for a very long time. Lou Grasmick was one of my mentors, and I learned a lot from him. And I'll tell this story because I tell it all the time, and it just is such a reflection of who Lou was. So when I first started at Grasmick, I knew nothing about construction, but they were like, we want somebody to come in and get our face out in the community, talk to customers, vendors, stakeholders. So I said, great, trust my uncle. Quite frankly, I have nothing else to do, no other skills, so I'll take it. So Lou, I go into his office, and at that time, he wasn't doing a lot hands-on in the company, but he would sit at his desk, and the minute the phone rang at Grasmick Lumber, he was picking up. He just liked to talk to people. He was in his 80s. He wanted something to do, and he came to the office every single day. So he would pick up the phone, and somebody would ask for something, and it was a product that Grasmick didn't have. And he'd say, yep, we'll get it for you, no problem. He'd put the phone down, he'd say, what the hell is that? He'd call 3 salespeople in, tell them what it was, and make sure everybody around him was going to source that product so he could call the customer back and find it. And that's when I learned, oh, he's resourceful. And every time, and it wasn't manipulative because we got it done, and he put a lot of pressure on us, but that was the type of mentality he had. So I came from soccer, that type of competitive background, to Lou. From there, I had a customer that I was doing business with. It was Merit Properties and Construction Services and CVC. And we had like a really great rapport when I was their, I guess, sales rep at Grasmick. So I ended up going to work for Merit. And I talked to my uncle about it because I was really enjoying it. And he said, no, go there because you want to see what's on the other side of the table. How are our customers experiencing it? And Merit was where I was really able to build my network. And I got to see everything, the whole gamut, from real estate to construction to acquisitions, all of it. I was able to put all the pieces together. But what I really did, and this is a piece of advice, and I know you probably are all doing it, is building my network. I would go into so many events a lot by myself. I was scared. I didn't know anybody, but I would force myself to talk to people until now I can really get in the room with anybody and be comfortable. I still get nervous for sure. I mean, I'm sweating right now, but like, you know, learn that skill to put yourself out there and please do it because it's the only reason I was able to start Taylor Construction and Supply. So fast forward, I was at Merit. I absolutely loved Merit. I learned so much. But what I was too immature and young to realize that there's so much more than the numbers. Because I was putting up great numbers. If you looked on paper, like getting all these things done. But when you're in an office and there's a lot of people, there's a lot more than the numbers. There's the relationships. There's the way you interact with people. And I was like, I'm gonna put blinders on and work and there's more to it. And I just didn't understand that. So it didn't work out. They fired me and I was in this position where I didn't know what I was gonna do next. Finally, one day I started my own LLC. And this is after just months. I just bought, a house. I had lost everything and I didn't have my parents to support me financially. I was by myself, just the savings in my bank account. So that's the day I decided I was going to bet on myself months after getting fired, that I was going to bet on myself and start my own company. And the timing happened to be impeccable because Port Covington and Trade Point Atlantic had just unveiled their master plans. And as many of you, if you're familiar with the projects, know about 30 to 40% of those projects are allotted for minority-owned companies. So I was like, man, if I could get a small piece of either one of those, I could float my entire business off of that. And that was the belief I entered into starting Taylor Construction and Supply. And here we are 8 years later in a multi-million-dollar business, and now we're at Trade Point Atlantic. We're located there, so total full circle.
I love hearing about how people get their start and what drives them, because you have to overcome so many things, and we're going to get into even more of that. But the genesis of all these different businesses, there's so much to learn behind that. Hilary, talk about how yours got started.
I got started. I think the one thing I'll also say about you is bet on yourself, right? And that's what I did. I didn't launch the Right Room until I was 45. I don't want to say floated, because I always just kind of were creative, and I was like, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try photography, and I'm gonna do PR, and I'm gonna write from Fashion Week, and I got to report from the Olympics, and it was really fun. And I always use that as my kind of North Star, just what I liked. And then, my son was born, and I stayed at home with him for the most part. And then, for me, in 2021, when I left, when my marriage ended, and I became a single mom, I moved, I didn't have a job, I didn't know what I was going to do, and I felt really lost and voiceless. And so I worked with a holistic coach when I was going through this really painful transition, and just how it was so helpful for me. And I was like, you know what? And I've always had that desire to help other people. And so I went through a course and got certified in that. And then along the way, I picked up these tools of nervous system regulation, breath work, yoga, Pilates, mindfulness, meditation, reflexology, Reiki, because they served me, and I wanted to be able to use those to help others. And so in 2022, I'm super emotional. We laugh, and I'm like, I cry in restaurants. So yeah, right. So I'm like, and I'm.
So I already told it. We had a call before we had this, and she said, "I'm a crier." I said, "Welcome. I am your sister. We are here."
And so, at the end of in 2022, because everybody goes into a marriage thinking they're going to be divorced, right? So I got divorced. Became a single mom, didn't have a job, moved into an apartment with my son. And then I started sharing openly after 15 years about my addiction story. I was a blackout drinker, and I was really embarrassed by that. I drank wine, so I didn't think I had a problem. And at 29, I checked myself into rehab. I was the only person I know to ever get sober. And so I didn't know what I was doing, but I bet on myself, right? And after 15 years of staying silent, I had this moment in 2022 where I was like, I bet there's another woman struggling, right? Like I'm like, what if one person, like I don't have the luxury of staying silent anymore. If I can help one woman feel less alone in whatever transition she's going through. And at the end of that year, I also lost my dad. So in 2022, 4 of the top 5 challenges in a person's life happened in 1 year. And I felt, and so I built a platform so other women wouldn't feel the same way I did. Or if they did, they had a safe space to come and start talking about it. And so through that, I developed one-on-one practice. We do cohorts for groups for women, divorced women that are, because each transition has its own challenge, right? And so I knew as someone that had been through a lot of transitions and challenges, I could lend an ear and an empathetic voice and space for any woman that was going through the same. Because we all have great friends and we all have great family, but if someone doesn't fully get it, they can support you. But it's nice to have someone look across the table and say, I struggle with drinking too, or I struggle with this too. I get you. Let me help you. And so the Right Room was born with one-on-one coaching, cohorts, group coaching. We're developing courses, and then a podcast. And so I wanted to amplify the voice of women, not only support women in what I do, but truly amplify their voices by giving women a platform to share their story. So another woman who might be struggling in silence with any transition or challenge can listen to someone else's story and not feel alone. Because we just need one person to see us, hear us, or understand us, to not feel alone and not try to struggle in silence. And so for me, it was kind of from pain purpose.
Thank you so much for that. We talked about bravery this morning. So all I'm hearing is bravery from both of our panelists so far. Arion, tell us your story. And when you came in and said you were from New York originally, when you said Arion Long, I said Long. Of course she's from New York. You didn't even have to explain that.
You can take me out of the girl. Yeah, take me out of the girl.
You said about Baltimore too. You can take the girl out of Baltimore, you cannot take
And
Baltimore out of the girl.
So my son is 5 and he says hot dog.
Double dose.
It's like both accents. You probably can meet each other. So yeah, my founding story has been very, very, I'll be honest, it's been a little ghetto, a little bit of a pain in the ass. I started the company after having painful periods. Like, I'm sure someone in the room hates their period the way that I did. But what happened upon graduating from Morgan was me stumbling into the office of different physicians and finding out that I had a cervical tumor. And that was why I was having these painful periods. But the thing that I didn't count on discovering was that it was linked directly to chemicals in the pads and tampons that I was using. And many of us just, we're in the store, we're grabbing always Kotex, Playtex, Tampax, whatever, any pads. And, we're not often thinking about what chemicals are inside them because they're white and it's very easy to assume that these products are made from cotton. So it turns out they were not. So upon discovering that, most of these products are made of nylon, which is essentially plastic, it's synthetic, and that harbors bacteria, I immediately wanted to switch to something organic. But at this time, the only tampons that I could find had like this barbed wire, like cardboard applicator. And I don't know where y'all, cardboard near my vagina. So I got to thinking, and ironically, this was around the same time that this company called Dollar Shave Club was scaling towards $1 billion exit. And what they do is they ship razors, you get like the razor refills, etc. But to me, if you ask me, the only company that really made sense to have a subscription was something with your period because you can't opt out of it. And so I set out, I was working for MedStar Health here in White Marsh, leading marketing for like a $5 billion business that I kind of hacked my way into. And the rest was history. So I launched. And very quickly I realized that like my little paychecks weren't cutting it. I did not have enough money. I was at events similar to Britt, like I was a one-woman show and I was the person that like my palms would sweat walking in the room. So I used to tell myself, like, Beyonce has Sasha Fierce, like, you need to come up with an alter ego. Tell people your name is Milan if you need to. And, like, you know, become someone that is rememberable. Say the thing that, like, gets them to accept the flaw. And so I ended up going on LinkedIn. And right around this time, LinkedIn and Microsoft were merging. And then Amazon and Whole Foods had this merger. And I didn't really know what an M&A was. I didn't know that it stood for merger and acquisition, but I had the wherewithal to like read the business section and look at the attorneys that were handling the deal. And I looked at Dollar Shave Club's exit and I said, you know what? I could probably build a company that is big enough and maybe sell it. Like a lot of people don't build to sell, but I'm interested in doing that. So I reached out to one of the attorneys. And with regard to networking, one of the things that I had the wherewithal to do in the name of being memorable was to give first. So for me, that looked like budgeting like just $50 a month and getting a few $5 Starbucks gift cards. But I would purchase the gift cards that you send through email. So when I reached out to this guy, I was like, hey, I'd love to have a virtual coffee date. I want to understand what you do. I don't know anything about M&A, but like, please take a meeting. And ironically, that was the thing that had him email me back. He was like, in all of my years, I'm a partner with Nelson Mullins. I have never had someone like give me anything. And like, he's like, I don't even know you. So let's wait.
Not how it works.
So fast forward, I want to say maybe a weekend, and it's wild because I was pregnant at this time and didn't know it, but looking back, all the signs were there. A week later, he invited me to a chat in DC with a company that was acquired for like $150 million, and my world opened up because for the first time, and I'm someone who like, I started college at Stony Brook at 14, I was at Morgan at 15, decoding anthrax at 12 in my sleep. Like I was like a science nerd. I was in a room for the first time where I didn't understand the language. They were talking about risk assessments and IPOs and like public offerings and SPAC deals. I didn't even know what SPAC meant. And so I decided that like this was going to be my mentor and I was going to figure out a way to have this guy at least meet with me for coffee once a month. But I knew that I would have to show him something that I was growing in some way, that his efforts weren't in vain. So I met Andy. Andy tells me, hey, you need money? I'm like, hey, I know. He's like, look, there's a pitch competition. You're a great speaker. Let's get you a deck together and like see if you can win this thing. So we sat in the Panera on Wisconsin Boulevard in Bethesda for 8 hours while I learned about like a pitch deck, projection. I learned about like market sizes and different things. And we put together the makings of what was an investor deck. But the next week, I went and I won $125,000 for a 5-minute pitch. So that was my startup capital. So things were going good. Femly was scaling. We became Dollar Shave Club for Vaginas. And people would remember me from that. Like I would go to conferences and you know, they do the Q&A, they pass the mic. I'm like, hey, I have Dollar Shave Club for Vaginas. This is my question. And like it helped me build up a network. And then, this is a wild ride, the unimaginable happens. I find out that like I'm pregnant a few weeks later, and months later, my husband and I lost our daughter Sage to late-term stillbirth. And it was Dr. Zara. I had a simple UTI, they gave me the wrong antibiotic, and because of that, it spread to my blood, which spread to my kidneys, heart, and liver, and I was on life support for a month. So I lost Sage like May 17th. I got to the hospital somewhere in June. And ironically, being pregnant was kind of what helped catapult me because I was so frantic for resources that I applied to everything, every pitch competition. I tried to go to every conference, applied for every scholarship. And literally the week that I got out of the hospital, I got the first email that, hey, you're a finalist. So I do what any Black woman does. I'm like, okay, I need a wig. Let me call my sister. Because ironically, I had a PICC line in my jugular because my veins had collapsed. So I called my sister. We ordered this wig on Amazon. I flipped it over so no one would see my goddamn PICC line. And I went to DC and I pitched. And that was number 2 of what became 60 pitch competitions and $1.6 million.
So where all of you I don't even need to ask the question about what are obstacles you overcome. My goodness, you all. But where do you find within yourself to pull from to say, I'm gonna bet on me? Some people just get to those positions and they're stuck. They don't then take that next step to have a multi-million-dollar company. They don't take the next step to then be able to say, you know what, I have what other women need, and I'm going to give that to them. You went through all of that, and you could stay right there. That's enough grief and pain and a lot going on. So where do you pull from? What is the next? How do you advocate for yourself in that position? Where does that come from?
It's a really good question. I don't know I have an exact answer for where I pulled it from. I think for me, it was probably some fear. I think that can be like the best motivator, but it can also paralyze you. Mm-hmm. So you can dance with it and you can get it to propel you, or you can let it hinder your life. And it's a decision we have to make. We have to look inside ourselves and make it and bet on ourselves. And I was a scared female in my 20s that didn't know what I was going to do, and I was trying to enter the most male-dominated industry in the world. Can you imagine what that looked like from an outsider looking in? Like, come on, really? And what I had to tell myself, and I still tell myself this today, like when I'm sitting across the table talking to somebody, no matter who it was a banker. I got turned down by every single bank except for one, M&T Bank, and I still bank with them today. Mm-hmm. But I was like, it's a person. It might be a lawyer, it might be a really smart banker, but they're a person and they have feelings and they understand stories. So as we're talking about obstacles in starting a company, especially as a female, it's very hard to get capital. And if you don't have money, you can't run a business, especially a business that has products. How are you going to buy them? The other challenge is I don't have any credit. So like, a net 30 or net 60 days, I didn't have any company history. So my vendors were like, we're not going to give you net 30. You got to pay when you buy the material. But my customers were expecting those terms from me. So what I really had to do, again, going back to the relationships, was leverage them. So I went to Grasmick Lumber, and they didn't know it, but they were my bank for the first, because they gave me terms just because they believed in me. And I utilized their terms and sold the lumber that they sold me just for a few customers. So you have to get really creative and really scrappy, and you can't always follow the rules. Sometimes you got to do things outside of the rules and break them. I mean, it's just because it's hard and it's challenging. When I went to M&T, why would they lend any money? By the way, they gave me a $50,000 line of credit and a $50,000 term loan, and I thought I was the richest company in the world. And I had no company history to show them whatsoever. But I told the guy's name was Mickey Gorman. He's no longer with him, but I will never forget him. And I told him my story and what I believed in and what I was trying to do, and they took a chance on me as a bank. The banks don't take a lot of risks, but he was human, and he listened to my story. Reggie Jarvis, who I'm still with today, he's our bonding agent. Same thing. He gave me $100,000, $200,000 bonding capacity for construction. A lot of times to bid on projects, you need this capacity. I didn't deserve it. I had nothing to show him, but we connected. So I think it's just believing in yourself, telling your story, and sitting down with people, and you have to enroll them in your life. You have to enroll them in your vision. Otherwise, you're going to be enrolled in someone else's vision. That's very important to remember. So you're always just sitting across from a human. No matter who they are, what positions, or how much life experience, you have a lot of value to bring. So just remember that.
Hilary, talk about what it is to advocate for yourself when you're out in the business world. And Britt, for you, you're entering a male-dominated. You've got to advocate for yourself as a woman. What were times where you had to advocate for yourself? Because sometimes we find that hard to do.
So I'm thinking of two things. One, I think the biggest time I had to advocate for myself, and for advocating myself means standing in my story and decreasing shame around who I am. Because like you said, we are all human. we all carry shame. We all have struggles. We all put our pants or skirts, whatever, one leg at a time. Like we are all the same. But, and so for me, I had to really work through decreasing the shame, that my life wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And what I mean by that is like, no, and I joke about this, it sounds funny, but nobody sits in the sandbox at 3 and it's like, I'm going to become an alcoholic and just be sad, and I'm going to lie, cheat, and steal to get what I want. And I'm like, I was a different person when I was drinking than I am now. And so for me, I had to advocate that my story is just as valid as anybody else's, and that the vulnerability is terrifying. Like, so in 2022, I stayed silent about my addiction for 15 years. And because I was worried, and this sounds like this is just real vulnerability, I was like, what if I put that on Instagram and people unfollow me? Which, I'm so sorry, like the world you're in, right? Like how ridiculous is that? Right? I was like, what if people don't like me? And then I had that moment of clarity. So for me, meditation is huge, and there are different forms of it. I explore different ways of it. Some days I need guided because this won't stop, and then other times I'm okay sitting. And so for me, in the moment of meditation, it was like, again, like what if you could help one woman? And so in that moment of advocating that my story was enough, I wasn't too much, I was okay the way I am, and being able to shout that story out. And there's some people, and there might be someone in here that's like, don't care, or that's stupid, and that's okay too, right? Because we all have our people. And we all, so I'm not saying everybody in here is doing that or judging. The point in saying that is like, I'm gonna walk into a room and share my story, and there's gonna be someone that doesn't like me, or doesn't like the way I share it, or doesn't like my shoes, or doesn't like my hair. And that's okay. And what I had to do was advocate for me. And that's hard, right? Because I'm also, an athlete. I was a straight A student. I was the fastest swimmer in the country, age 11 and 12. I had a scholarship to swim at the University of Richmond. I held school records. So I had this thing, if I look perfect on the outside, that's okay. Because if you guys think I'm okay, then I'm okay. And what I had to do is flip that story and say, like, I'm not okay, and it's okay asking for help. And I'm going to advocate for me. Because at the end of the day, I've got to go home and live with myself and put my head in the pillow and know that today I did the best that I could do for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's huge. That is huge. Arion, how about a time when you had to get out there and say, no, this is what I need, this is what I want, I need to advocate for myself?
Oh, I feel like I do that every day. I think that one of the things that has allowed me to advocate for myself in a way that has kind of led to success is the understanding of who I am. Like, I like to think in my 20s, I'll be 36 this year. In my 20s, I had no idea who I was. I knew I was powerful because your homegirl can manifest. But, I come from a family of really, really accomplished women. In my, at least on my maternal side, you don't get married. You have 2 or 3 boyfriends and live your life into the sunset. And so I get things a little differently. But the thing that has kind of kept me going, ironically, and it comes back to being like a science geek. When I lost my daughter, I was looking for so many answers. I was trying to figure out, like, was something wrong with me? Did I have a condition? Like, what was it? And one of the things that I discovered, which is a really, really fun fact for all of us, is that literally, like, the minute that a sperm meets an egg and there is conception, there is actually visible light. And that light is the result of an explosion of zinc. And so scientists now are actually using how bright the light is to determine which eggs and embryos they implant, and IVF and more. But if you think about it like that, it puts the whole we are beings of light into a framework that you could actually use through life. And I like to think that, like, we're all here in this dimension at the same time for a very specific reason. And there have been times where I've had to say no to things. There have been times where I have had investors offering a silver platter of money. And I knew that all money is not good money. I don't want to take this. I don't want to marry this guy. I don't want to be, in bed, so to speak, for 30 years with someone who I don't even believe in or like. And so for me, that has been one of the biggest sources of friction on my journey, like learning when to say no, even when I know that there could be repercussions from it. You could be blackballed, you could lose out on opportunities, but the thing that's helped me most is the ability to kind of sleep at night. The other thing is my support system does not look traditional. My mom was an addict for my whole life. Like, I was born with crack cocaine in my system. And so my grandmother actually quit singing with the Shirelles after 40 years and getting in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to adopt 6 of us, all of the grandchildren. And so when things get hard, like, that's who I lean to. This is actually my first event this year because my grandma had a heart attack on the 5th.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. She's completely home and she's well, but you know, life is going to throw curveballs at you, and you're always going to have an option, especially when you don't feel like you have one. There is always going to be a fork in the road where you will be able to choose right or left. And I'm at a point where I am going wherever looks like peace.
So that leads into a conversation about courage. When you have to summon courage, when there's a decision on the table and you've got to find the courage to go one way or the other. Do you have an incident like that?
Yeah, so many. One that really comes to mind from a business perspective is when I first started the business. When you start a business, you're hungry. So you start taking on work that you don't really want and was never in your vision. You start a business, you think you're going to do one thing, at least me, and I'm doing everything but the one thing I thought I was going to do. So I came from at Marriott, we did general construction. So we were but I wanted to be in the supply side, just selling construction materials. But I had all these relationships I had developed, and they said, well, our relationship was with you. We'd really like you to build this restaurant. And so I said, sure, definitely. I had no labor, nothing, but what I did, I subcontracted work out. So I started developing this GC side. We did interior work. So if you've ever been to Fed Hill, we did some of those restaurants, some hospital work. And simultaneously, I was building the supply side, which was mainly lumber at that time. But what happened was we were selling to general contractors, and I was developing a general contracting side of the business. So you see, all of a sudden, it's very conflicting. So I had a GC sit me down and say, Britt, we want to buy materials from you and we enjoy working with you, but we feel like we're supporting a competitor. And I thought to myself, we're so small compared to you. I don't even know why we're on your radar. But everybody starts small. We all start from nothing. So he was, and that all of a sudden was that crossroads. The problem is when you're young and you're just starting a company, you have very little revenue, and that was more than 50% of our revenue. But I knew it was not the right path. It's a lot of risk. Lower profit margins, it's not what I had set out to do. But at that time, I decided, I made a hard decision to dissolve that side of the business and go full steam ahead into just supply. Now here we are, a full supply company. We do a lot more than lumber, and it has paid off tenfold. But in that moment, it's so hard when you're losing 50% of your revenue and you're barely making any money to start. But that is, as we get older and we know ourselves, it's staying true to who you are. And just something I'll add to that, I just became a mom 9 months ago to my daughter. And thank you. So anyone, it's so game changing because I've never known myself or been able to be as true to myself as I had this past 9 months. Because I just have so much more meaning and intention that I can say no. Because when it comes to my daughter and Moxie, there's just so much more intention in my life. So there's these crossroads that we go through that I think we develop that ability to say no and to be more aligned with who we are. But I think it just takes time. I don't think we can just go into make our minds up. It takes these different moments in time and hardships. The last thing I'll say is anyone that is going through a crossroads or a transition or a hardship, these are the moments right now you'll look back on, and these are what will define you. It won't be your wins. You will not look back at your wins and be I'm really glad that happened. It'll be the moment you're going through the shit, that's going to get you to the other side. So anytime you're in it, just know this is the defining moment for you.
It's true. Hilary, I'll let you answer that, and then I'm gonna open it up because the ladies have questions for you. So, talk about courage.
Yes. But I think one is the power of the pause too, right? And for me, I know you guys talked about this kind of emotional intelligence or the emotional emotions, right? and the choice, like kind of bridging both of those, like in those moments that define us, right? The times of challenges. And this also goes back to your question, like how do you just keep going? You have two choices, right? The choice for me was to sit and using addiction, right? Like I could still keep going down that path of feeling disconnected, sad, lonely, terrified, couldn't look at myself in the mirror, all of those things. Or I could choose the other hard, right? It's like choose your hard. Choose your hard to make a change, or choose your hard to keep going on a path that was just, for me, really destructive. And so that took a lot of courage because nobody I knew had done that before. And I think you can use that, fill in that story with anything else, right? Like being a woman in a male-dominated, like anything that's never been done before. I didn't know anybody that had gotten sober. I didn't know anybody that went to rehab. I didn't know anybody that went to 12 steps. I had no idea. But I was sick and tired of like BS that I was so, the pain, I had to make a change. And then another one quickly, like kind of the courage is I launched a podcast in August. And I was coming from an athlete background. I was like, I'm terrified. I'm not Rich Roll or Gabby Bernstein, so I'm not going to do it. Right? Like I wanted to arrive versus like the journey. To your point, like the journey is where the joy and the lessons. But I was like, I don't want to bypass the pain and the struggle. And I just want to arrive. And the second I put it out there, I was like, oh, and I get a message like I listen. I'm like, oh, this and I was like, thank you. And I get so much joy out of that. And it's not. And I'm not Rich Roll or Gabby Bernstein or Glennon Doyle. Like, I'm not that. But I have, like, community. And that's enough. Yes. And that courage to take that first step was enough.
I have a quick addition.
Oh, absolutely.
So there are two analogies. And I don't know if you're anything like me. There are times, like, people say trust yourself. For the most part, I do. But there are very specific times where I now know I cannot trust myself. Thank God I'm married, even though I'm single today because I don't have my ring. But yeah, there are very specific times where I know I can't trust myself. But you have to have self-awareness to know that.
Yes.
Like I know that when I am going through a crisis or grief, my pause might need to look like 12 hours, especially if it's like a spicy email from someone. You're not going to hear from me until tomorrow when I can construct a professional response. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, and this comes from, oh God, I can't think of his name, but he is the inventor of all internet integrations. I did this thing called Mindshare in DC, which is like a leadership symposium. And one of the things that I was struggling with in my business was decision paralysis and like the assumption of various choices and not knowing which direction to go when more than one direction looks good. And there were two things that he said that helped him build his like mega business. One was knowing when something was a monkey or a pedestal. Is it a monkey? Is this thing here to distract you? Or is it a pedestal that's going to allow you to move forward or rise up? And then two, making a decision and understanding when something is a one-way door and you can't go back on it, or is it a revolving door? If I make this decision and I am wrong, can I come back and change it? And so for me, that helped because there have been a ton of decisions we've had to make since our inception, going from subscription box to dispensers, installed in restrooms. There were all these decisions. And now I literally ask myself, is this a pedestal? Is this a monkey? And I can make a concrete decision much quicker instead of having to talk to my personal board of advisors or mull it over and things like that.
I like that. Writing it down.
I'd like to add one thing right on the back of that is also, you don't always have to be 100% right, which can cause paralysis. A lot of times it's the person, we talk about this all the time, that's more committed.
Yep.
So if you're more committed, even though if you're not as right, you can get further. Yep. So don't always worry about God, is this the right decision? Just go for it. Don't go for the totally bad decision. The kind of right decision. Be really committed to that.
So much of what they're saying hits upon